Dofus? Who's the Dofus? Is it the one in the middle? Today I'll be reviewing Dofus Book 1, Julith. But before I can get into the movie, I have to get into the history of Dofus and its creation. Dofus was created by the French company Ankama and originally started as an MMO. This MMO came out in 2004 and is still going today, although with a smaller player base. Dofus was followed up by Dofus Arena, which released in 2010 and closed in 2014, and that was followed by Wakfu, which was released in 2012 and is also still going on today. Dofus and Wakfu both take place on the planet of 12, which is located inside a larger universe called the Cosmos. And this larger universe is used by Ankama to tell a transmedia narrative, which is a method of storytelling that uses different forms of media to tell a story. It originally started off as a video game with Dofus, but it was also translated to movies, animation, comic books, even board games. Ankama has a design philosophy of not using the same story twice. So if they make a movie, they can't retell that movie through other mediums like comic books or video games. But that's probably not a hard fast rule, since they broke that rule with Dofus Book 1 by creating a novelization of the movie. As far as I'm aware, the first major piece of media outside of video games would be for Wakfu, which had a TV series released in 2008, despite the Wakfu MMO still being in production and not coming out for another 4 years. I believe the Wakfu series can be watched on Netflix right now, so go check it out before their license expires for it. In 2013, Dofus Treasures of Caribbean was released, and in 2016, Dofus Book 1 was released. They also released this other movie in 2018, but I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to get beat down by the YouTube algorithm. From what I've read up on, it's recommended for you to watch Dofus Treasures of Caribbean, but it's not entirely necessary to enjoy Book 1, in my opinion. I'm going to be calling Dofus Book 1 Julith Book 1 just for brevity's sake. There's a major problem with Book 1, and it's that it's basically unavailable for streaming or watching here in the US. It was available at one point. It was even on the Steam store page for streaming, but was unlisted by Ankama's request. The easiest way I can think of to watch Book 1 is to buy a DVD or a Blu-ray and play it on a computer. The problem is they're region 2, I believe, which is Europe. But I'm in the US, which is region 1. That's not a big problem with DVDs, since you can just pop it in the computer and it'll run. But with Blu-rays, there's an added risk of there being some sort of lock on it. I have an external Blu-ray player that I occasionally test out Blu-rays with, but they all have some sort of lock on it so that you can't play it on a computer. You have to pop it into a dedicated Blu-ray player. And on that note, there's also a second problem, and it's that there are no English subtitles for Book 1. It's all French and nothing else. Luckily, there's this person on DeviantArt called the Wishing Star in a Jar, and they and the team worked to create English subtitles for Book 1 and released it for free for people to download. But there's another problem. In order to play the DVDs or Blu-rays, you basically have to download VLC Media Player and use that to load in the subtitles they made. But from what I've read in the comments, you really should use the Blu-ray, since the syncing for the fan subtitles works best with that. I kind of got around it, but it's a major pain. I couldn't find any fix for the desyncs with the DVD version, which is the most likely version you'll be able to get your hands on. Using VLC, the only method I had was to constantly resync the subtitles as the movie went on. And I even made this little cheat sheet so I could refer to it whenever I went back to the movie to check out certain scenes. And the way I resynced the subtitles with the movie is the characters would start talking and I would hit Shift H. Then whenever the subtitle would pop up, I would hit Shift J and then Shift K. Shift J notes when the subtitles start and where it syncs up with the audio, and Shift K just syncs it up, but you have to wait a few seconds for it to process. And I did that for almost 2 hours. More than 2 hours even, because I had to keep pausing, resyncing, waiting. Sometimes I'd have to stop, turn off VLC, and then start it back up again and reload the movie. It's just a real pain with the DVD, but I'm not spending money on a Blu-ray because look at that price and oh my god, why does it say paperback? I said before that they made a book, but why would they put paperback when they're selling the Blu-ray? It's very concerning to me. With that out of the way, there's just a little bit of lore I'd like to throw in, since while it's not important for book one, it is important for the larger universe. The first piece being that book one takes place in the year 400, and Wakfu generally takes place around 1,000 years later. And also, 3 years before book one takes place is when the Treasures of Cherubim takes place. There's a more detailed timeline posted by Wishing Star, but I didn't really look into it because I didn't want to read any potential spoilers. And now, with all of that out of the way, I can finally start talking about the movie. Except I can't, because the movie starts off by giving us even more lore. Now, Dofus is just a fancy name for dragon eggs. And these dragon eggs are a source of power, with the 6 most notable ones being called the primordial Dofus. And that for centuries, they've been at the center of a war between 2 cities called Bonta and Brakmar. Bonta is the place where we mostly center the story we follow, with Brakmar almost never being inside except for like brief moments. On top of that, during this war, there were 2 people. These 2 people are Jahash, who holds the Ivory Dofus and is part of Banta, and Julith the Butcher, who holds the Ebony Dofus and is part of Brakmar. The narrator tells us that Julith marched on Banta with her soldiers, and Jahash was forced to defend Banta, and the 2 of them would fight for 69 days before they kissed, shocking soldiers on both sides of the war, and they got married. But the narrator tells us that Julith still has a desire to destroy Banta, and so she sets the Ebony Dofus to blow the city up or something, and it causes a lot of damage. And in order to stop the Ebony Dofus, Jahash uses the Ivory Dofus, and it kills him. It consumes the Ivory Dofus and cracks the Ebony Dofus. From here, we cut to the start of the movie, which is 10 years later, celebrating Jahash sacrificing himself, and also celebrating a new Hupper mage that can follow in his footsteps. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Jahash and Julith are both called Hupper mages, and that's just what they call magic users in this universe. The Hupper mage here is called Bakara Jurgen. As part of her graduating into a full-fledged Hupper mage, she has to put on a fireworks show or something for the citizens. And this is when Julith shows up. And she's like, my compliments to the artist on this statue of Jahash. It's a very good likeness. And then she proceeds to super jump or something and push the king to his almost fatal death. But he gets caught by these twins that were officiating everything. And Julith goes up to the Ebony Dofus, snatches it with her cloak, and just flies away. And from there we transition to the morning and our main character Joris, who's just waking up and getting ready when this little dog girl named Lilith, I don't know how to pronounce her name, but she appears and she gives him a newspaper saying that despite some random thing that happened the night before, they're still going on with this sports match that's going on. And Joris is excited because his favorite player is going to be there on that day, signing autographs and whatever. And Lilith gives us some important backstory on Joris because he doesn't know who his parents are. And she's like, so your mom is a gobble player now too, huh? You change your mind like you change your underpants. And Joris is like, I don't change my underpants at all, you stupid girl. And they just decide on something childish and race to the bottom of the stairs. And as they're racing, we see an eye open up in the wall. And this is Lewis. Lewis is a shushu, I believe they're called. They're sort of demons that exist in this universe. And one of the ways that they're contained is by putting them into an object. And in this instance, it's the house itself with Lewis. Lewis trips them up and makes them fall down the stairs, but Joris lands on the bottom first, so he's technically the winner. But both of them get chided by this old dude who we learn is called Papisha, and he is an old cat. And he makes them play this weird red light, green light game with colored tiles on the floor that look like the sides of a dice. Lilot sabotages Joris to lose, so Papisha punishes him by licking him, and then they have breakfast. While they're having breakfast, we get a little bit of backstory with Lilot. Papisha's like, why don't you just move in with us? You're basically like family. And Lilot goes into this story about her friend Gigi. Gigi was adopted by this rich family and got pampered and just enjoying the high life. But the problem with Gigi is that they shed. And because of the shedding, they ended up getting abandoned by the family. And Lilot took that as a lesson of, in order to avoid being hurt, it's better to not have a family and just live on her own in the streets. And when I say adopted, I mean adopted as a pet, which is kind of weird. Joris asks Papisha if he's going to keep his promise about them going to see his favorite player, Khan Karkas, which Papisha says, yeah, we're going to go see him. But first he has to finish setting up the shop for the morning. And just in case you're wondering, the sport they're talking about is called gobble. It's basically like American football, but fantasied up. And it plays a major role in the Cosmos universe, with some episodes being entirely dedicated to the game in the Wakfu animated series. But going back to the movie, we see that Joris is freakishly fast and strong, as is notable by him just speeding around, setting up shop, while Lilot is just struggling with a single box and trips. A little yellow bird appears, and these birds are used to deliver messages in this universe, and this bird directly repeats whatever was told to it, and it tells Papisha that the ebony Dofus was stolen and they need to talk, which forces Papisha to break his promise to Joris and tells him to stay there. Joris is upset that Papisha is breaking his promise, but he has to go meet with the person who sent the message. Instead of immediately cutting to him meeting this person, we get a scene of him just walking to the meeting spot, which is pretty nice. It's just a slow stroll through the city, giving us a chance to think and observe this world and how the people live in it. Honestly, it feels like they're just showing off how skilled they are, because there's this one brief section where we're overlooking the city and Papisha is in the lower left just turning a corner, but the rest of the scene is just dominated with the cityscape and little figures of people just going about their business. The meeting spot is this outside bar area, and Papisha's just like, I know you're there, come out and talk with me, Bakara. And in case you forgot, Bakara is from the beginning of the movie. They have a quick talk where Bakara reveals it's Julith that took the ebony Dofus, and Papisha's like, I need to go, I need to tell Joris everything. But Joris and Lilot decided to sneak out and head to the arena where the Gobble event is taking place. At the arena, Lilot's like, look here, we can get in through here. You learn a thing or two when you live on the streets like I do. And they're going in through this metal grate, which Joris passes through easily. But Lilot's head is a little too big, and her bell on her head doesn't help. But she doesn't want to get rid of it because it's the only thing she has left of her parents. So she just tells Joris to leave her behind, and he does, because some guards are making the rounds and they're on the verge of spotting them. And naturally they chase Joris. I don't really know what happens with Lilot, but I assume she gets captured by the guards because she's just stuck there in the grate. Joris just runs and he finds himself at the arena where they're holding a contest to see who's going to join the team with the best player that Joris admires, and it's Khan Karkas, the next main character of the movie. It's just hyping him up. There's a stand full of women just waiting to see him. They're thirsty. They need a drink. This sheep-looking guy is just hyping him up and acting like he's some sort of god or sacred person. And before I show anything of him, I just want everyone to know they really emphasize a certain region of his body. So that's there. But yeah, we see that he's very physically capable and he's very arrogant with reason because he's actually capable, but he says some pretty hurtful stuff to the people that are trying out, and the only person that really impresses him is Joris, because he's just there to get his ball signed, and when he throws it at Carcass, he catches it and he's forced back from Joris' strength, and he's like, alright, whoever can take the ball from this kid, I'll hire you. All the players try to get the ball from Joris, but they all fail until eventually Khan just catches the ball and slams it into the ground. And all of the women are super ecstatic and they start throwing their undergarments at him. Remember, this is a French movie. And since none of the players managed to get the ball from Joris, he gets rid of all of them. And they're all pissed, especially this one blue guy. He'll become Ken is talking to Joris about possibly getting him on the team when Papisha shows up with Julith and Baccarat. And naturally, Papisha and Joris have an argument and ends up with Joris running away. And during this scene, we also have a moment with Khan seeing Baccarat and instantly falling in love at first sight. And we have this funny scene that I enjoyed of just his heart getting destroyed. Khan chases after Joris with hopes that he'll be able to see Baccarat again. But we cut to nighttime and Joris is just wandering through the city, and oh my god, it's a red light district. I'm gonna repeat this a few times, I guess, but it's a French movie. Get used to it. Joris is walking silently through a red light district, blankly staring ahead, not blinking. And just in his mind, he's thinking of Lilith saying he abandoned her like her friend Gigi was abandoned. And Papisha saying, I'm old and washed up, am I? How could you say such things to me, Joris? So Joris buys some treats for them, hoping they would forgive him. And Khan just suddenly appears. And they both go together to see Papisha. We see Julith for a few seconds with the ebony Dofus, and she's just looking off into the distance with a smirk on her face. Papisha is shown just sad Joris is gone. Lilith is there too, as is Baccarat. And then Joris just comes in, and at first Papisha's like, oh my god, he's back, and then he just starts pouting fakely. And while they're trying to make up, Joris suddenly has this weird moment where his body just starts Cronenberging. And Papisha's like, oh no. And he picks him up and puts him in his chair. The second time, Joris's body freaks out. Papisha and Baccarat make Joris, Lilith, and Khan hide. And Julith appears by ripping open the front entrance. And this just terrifies Louis. He's looking at her with tears in his eyes. They talk a bit and a fight starts between Julith and Baccarat, but Baccarat doesn't really stand a chance against Julith. Papisha joins the action by having Louis send him his 1001 Claws armor, which Iron Man's its way onto him, and uses these giant nunchucks to fight. And he also has a little sip of this fire potion that gets him drunk. He mentions how the last time he fought Julith with these, he scarred her, but she's like, I don't blame you, and honestly I think these look good on me. Which is pretty badass. And then they fight. I won't go into too much detail about the fight. It's something you should experience more than you should hear descriptions about. But it reaches its climax when Joris has another Cronenberg moment and Julith notices him there and she sends an attack his way, which Papisha bodies in order to protect Joris. Julith then takes out the ebony Dofus and starts sucking this thing out of Joris. And she stops when she hears Lilith call him by his name. And she's like, no, it can't be. And she cuts it off. Baccarat and Papisha take this chance to sneak attack her. And Papisha takes this thing out of his mouth and throws it on the ground to make a portal, which he jumps through with Joris in his hands. And Baccarat tries to get Lilith to come with her. But Khan pops out of a dresser and accidentally drags Baccarat with her and the portal closes. So now Lilith is alone with Julith. We cut to the others on the other side of the portal. Baccarat wakes up on top of Khan and he tries to flirt with her and she's kind of into it but not really. And we see Papisha with the hole in his chest. Papisha reveals that Joris is Jahash and Julith's son, and that when the ebony Dofus broke, The dragon that was inside it went inside Joris, and the only way they can defend themselves against the broken ebony Dofus, which is still powerful and can regain its strength by taking the dragon out of Joris, is to use the Ivory Dofus, which Papisha hid in his temple, and eventually Papisha's body just turns to light, and it's very sad, but they have to keep going, and this brief section is mostly just admiring the scenery as they make their way. It's revealed that Papisha was a demigod or something, and that in this place there are temples for every demigod, and the higher up one is, the more favored by the gods that demigod is, and Papisha's is all the way at the top, meaning he was the most loved. We cut to Julith in Brackmar, and she goes to recruit Papisha's brother Acham Crepin, who hates Papisha. She gives Acham Lilot's spell to make Joris comply. The first encounter between Acham and the group is pretty brief. They just talk a bit and Acham chases them. Our heroes go into a cave and eventually they find themselves in this big room with little creatures in them. Joris reveals that they're called Pupus. They're usually calm, but they hate blood and hair. And while they aren't bleeding, Bakara and Khan have hair, so naturally they're going to be attacked. But Joris doesn't mind, so he just jumps straight ahead. And we find out that the dragon inside him scares the Pupuses. And Bakara takes advantage of this and goes with him to the other end of the room, leaving Khan behind. And he jumps in to try and follow them, but gets attacked. And he gets a lot of swelling from the bites they give him. And Joris is like, we're not leaving him behind. And it goes back to get him. Eventually they make it to Papisha's temple, where they get into a fight with Acham. Khan gets swallowed up by the giant bat that Acham is flying around on. And Bakara is the one that's fighting Acham at first. But eventually Joris is like, what have you done to Lilot? And the dragon inside him activates. And he gets a power boost and he starts fighting Acham with one of his own swords. But it leads to them damaging the main support, keeping the dome they're in up. And it just collapses down on top of them and they're covered in rubble. Bakara, Joris, and Khan aren't trapped, but Acham is. And Joris takes advantage of this to talk to him and try to find out why he hates his brother so much. And it's mostly out of jealousy that Acham hates his brother. And Joris tries to help him because he's Papisha's brother, so they're family, and family always helps each other. Bakara does not want to help him, but she does eventually because Joris is just bullheaded and convinces her. Bakara finds this pit thing that she slides down to see what's ahead, and everyone follows after her. And they wind up in a giant room with a cat head that appears. And it turns out it's a different version of the game Joris played when Papisha first appeared. It's a red light, green light game, but they also have to stand on the number that appears. So if it's a 4-sided die that appears, they have to land on a panel with 4 lights and touch those. Otherwise, they end up getting electric shocked. And during this time, we just have Joris and Acham talking and I guess bonding or whatever. We've also got a little flirting between Bakara and Khan. Once they finish the game, they enter a chamber that holds the Ivory Dofus, and the dragon inside shows itself to them. And I'm not entirely sure on the pronunciation of its name, but it is Dardontakal, or at least that's the translation I got for its name. It also reveals the name of the dragon living inside of Joris. Oh god. Its name is Grogalorasalar? Grogalor Asalar? That's the best I can do, I'm sorry. But yeah, Dardontakal? I'm just gonna call him Dardon. Dardon reveals himself to the crew and starts playing to their weaknesses, just telling them, we could be great, you can do so much with my power. But Joris is the only one that's like, I know there's a catch, what do you want? Dardon just says, I want you to be my guardian, Joris. Unlike them, you're like your father and I know you won't abuse my power. And Joris accepts. And just to show no hard feelings for trying to manipulate them, Dardon brings forward a reborn Papisha, who is now a kitten. And he says that while they're together again, now it's Joris' turn to be the father, and I think that's kind of messed up. It's sweet that they're together again, but I don't think Joris, who's still 10, should be left in charge of another child. Anyway, Stardon makes a portal that they all go through, and they're in this woody field area, and Julith appears, and she has Lilot with her, and Julith tries to convince Joris to go with her, but Bakara interferes by attacking Julith, which causes the Ivory Dofus to fall out of Joris's hands, and Bakara just snatches it up and uses it as a power-up. And it's a pretty impressive power-up. She just launches Julith away, but the others try to get her to stop, but the power just seems to be really getting to her head, to the point where she nearly kills Achum, and there's a little recognition in her face that she's doing something wrong, but she keeps going, and it takes Joris putting himself in harm's way, saying that he's Papisha's brother, and if she wants to hurt Achum, she has to go through him first. And Bakara says she's doing what's right, but Joris counters that she doesn't know what's right, and that's why the Dofus didn't choose her. And you can tell Bakara knows this, but she redirects her anger towards Julith and starts attacking her again. Bakara wants revenge for her brother's death, but Julith says that she's not the one that set the Ebony Dofus to destroy Banta, that she really did love Jahash. And to top it all off, Julith reveals that she's trying to bring back Jahash from the dead. Bakara obviously doesn't believe her and tries to kill her, but Julith smacks the Ebony Dofus into the Ivory Dofus and disperses the power Bakara got, which sends some of the energy flying towards Joris, and there's an explosion there, which distracts Bakara so Julith can snatch the Ivory Dofus and beat down Bakara. And it turns out Acham bodied the energy for Joris, and he dies. Thanks a lot, Bakara. Joris decides to go with Julith so he can reform his family, and after they leave, Lilot is just like, but aren't we your family, Joris? We cut to Khan at the stadium, and there's all the players he was mean to, including the blue guy, Marcin from before, and they're all pissed at him because he was mean. So Marcin uses a magic wand to switch bodies with him and says they're gonna ruin his reputation so he can never show his face again. And what I assume to be underneath the stadium is Julith and Joris, and Julith puts the Ivory Dofus into a mascot uniform and brings it to life to serve her and protect Joris. And then she goes deeper into this tunnel they're in and reveals a central area which contains a machine that she's going to use to bring back Jahash. And Joris is like, we're going to bring him back with a pair of underpants. And Julith says, I wove these underpants for your father while I was pregnant for you. It is vital I use these to bring him back. And fair enough, I guess. We cut to Lilot, who's using a wheelbarrow to transport Bakara and Papisha to Lewis, who is still alive, thankfully. And Bakara's upset with herself and starts drinking Papisha's fire potion and getting drunk off it. She laments over killing Acham and says that ever since her brother died, she had this ball of hate inside her. And then one day she's told that it doesn't have any reason to exist, but that ball of hate is still inside her. And she ponders the fact that Julith is going to resurrect Jahash, even though she never learned that when she was in school. And Lewis reveals that it's dark magic and smacks Bakara in the face with a book. We cut back to Joris and Julith extracts the dragon from Joris and repairs the Ebony Dofus and plops it on top of her device, which activates and kills a guy right in front of Joris. We cut back to our group with Lewis and learn that in order to bring back Jahash, they have to sacrifice 1,000 people, and Julith is going to use everyone at the Kabul stadium. And we cut to the stadium. We see Marcin is already in the process of ruining Khan's reputation, and Khan and Marcin's body meets up with Lilot. And they sneak in through the gate we saw earlier. Khan slips in through easily, but Lilot still can't. But Khan's like, no way, we're in this together. And he just pops her through with no problem. We cut back to underground where Bakara confronts Julith, but Bakara's too drunk and it's already too late. And Julith makes the platform she and Joris are standing on float up and break through the floor of the stadium. She launches a quick attack to the king, but the twins from the beginning of the movie block it, and a bunch of other mages start flying around and attacking her, but they're no match. And while the twins are trying to escape with the king, Julith manages to strike them with her machine and suck their souls out. And from here she starts sucking the souls out of everyone in the stadium. Joris hears Lilot calling for him, and he manages to get away and jump off the platform with Bakara catching him. but they get chased by the mascot that Julith put the Dofus in. And it's tough. It sends them flying and smacks them around a lot. But eventually Khan somehow manages to get inside and shove the Dofus out. And Joris confronts his mother, saying that she has to stop hurting all these innocent people. And this sends us to another flashback with Julith narrating. And she says that one of these innocent people stole the Dofus from her and set it off to destroy the city. And while she was trying to get it under control, the people didn't give her a chance and attacked her. This resulted in her getting severe injuries, which she had to recover from in the sewers of the city. And the most painful part to her was that these innocent people took Jahash and Joris away from her because they're the only things that gave her life meaning. Joris says that his father wouldn't want this, but since Julith doesn't want to stop, he's gonna have to make her stop, which prompts Julith to summon 3 of her servants, and she uses her magic to hook them out. And the group knows that the only way to beat her is to make the Ivory Dofus come into contact with the Ebony Dofus so they can cancel each other out. And this just starts a struggle between the group and the 3 servants. While they're fighting against the 3 servants, Khan recruits Marcin to help them by saying he'll give Marcin a spot in his team if he does. And Marcin is grateful for that. And from here, it's just a struggle of the group trying to get the Ivory Dofus to the Ebony one, with all of them slowly getting their souls sucked out by the machine. And Joris is the only one that's left. And he comes close to making them come into contact with each other, but his mother stops him with her cape, and she's just disappointed in him. During all of this, Jahash finally reforms, sort of, and he's just looking at himself and looking at what's happening around him. And when he finally makes eye contact with the sun, he knows instinctively, I assume, that whatever's going on isn't right, and he just reaches out to Julith and just looks at her with this sad look on his face. And Julith understands what he's saying with his eyes. They have a brief moment together, and Julith finally goes up and makes the Dofuses come into contact with each other. And we're sent to this soul space, and we see all the souls revolving around the field with the naked Joris right there in the middle, and the 2 Dofuses. And we also see his parents finally together, and they ascend into a light, which basically means they're both dead now. Dargon gives a few words of comfort to Joris, and he says that the only way to release all the souls that were taken was for his brother to do that. But naturally his brother is all traumatized and angry, but Joris just hugs him and reassures him that he won't let anyone use him or his brother for evil. All the souls are released, and we end the movie on a group hug. I said a group hug. I said a group hug. But that's not entirely the end. The entire credit sequence is vignettes of Joris going through these obstacles. And at the end of the credits, it's Joris putting both Dofuses into a chest for safekeeping. And just like a Marvel movie, we also have an after credits. Back when Bakara got hit with the soul-sucking machine, she told Khan she'd go on a date with him. But now she's sending him a message. We have Khan showering, and Marcin's like, yo, I'm super glad to be part of the team now. But Khan's like, you're not getting a part in this team. I only said that because I thought we were all gonna die and I wanted to be nice. And that makes Marcin sad and runs off. And then Khan immediately gets a message from Bakara saying that she's decided against going on a date with him, which makes Khan sad. And this is how we end the movie, which I think is nice. This is a really nice movie. The high points for me were definitely the parts where the characters don't talk. It's just things going on and we just watch things and process it as it's happening. Like I mentioned in my review for Yak, American movies have this weird need to always have someone saying something, so it's nice just to have moments of silence. I'd recommend people watch this movie, but like I said at the start of this video, it is a massive pain trying to watch. As far as I know, there's no official English version out there. You probably have to pirate it, but I wouldn't risk it myself. You're restricted to using a computer and a DVD and fan subs, which aren't perfectly synced up with a DVD, but they will work with the Blu-ray, but that's more expensive, and there's a chance the Blu-ray won't be read by your computer. I just want people to get more eyes on this, see if we can drum up some support for it. The Wakfu TV series has an English release, which I believe you can currently watch on Netflix, and again, that came out before this movie, so it seems weird to me that there's no English version that I'm aware of. I don't know, just let me know what you think in the comments below. Maybe someday we'll get an English version, and maybe someday they'll release the sequel that they promised. Until next time, later.